Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Canada's top security officials say that China, Russia, and India can and will try to influence the ongoing federal election. So, what could that look like, and what can be done to protect against foreign interference? And in our second half hour, ever feel like you're in a never ending loop of stress and anxiety? We'll speak to an expert about breaking free from burnout. I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Thank you for joining us on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. How big of a threat do you think foreign interference will be for the upcoming federal election? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Our email, of course, is bctoday@cbc.ca. And federal officials are highlighting the influence that China, Russia, and India will attempt to have in the Canadian election. Officials from the Security and Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force spoke yesterday about the steps foreign hostile actors will be taking during this federal election. So how concerned are you about foreign interference, and what role could foreign interference from China, Russia, and India play in the upcoming federal election? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, or email us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca. Aaron Shull is a security expert and the managing director at the Centre for International Governance Innovation. Hi, Aaron. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having this conversation at this important time. I'm delighted to be with you.
Wonderful. So I think let's start with the basics. Can you explain just how China, India, and Russia could attempt to interfere in our election here?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of ways, and I don't have to make it up. We just did a big public inquiry into foreign interference that lasted over a year. There was a really respected judge who kind of got to the bottom of it. And there's a few things that they can do. One is what they call hack and leak, so that they'll get into a political campaign, they'll find some embarrassing dirt, they'll hack into those systems, and then they'll leak it with a view to damaging the credibility of candidates that they don't like. They can also try and muck with the elections infrastructure itself, although that's maybe a little bit less important in Canada because we've got a paper-backed ballot, and I still have not found a good way to hack a piece of paper. So that's one tactic.
Fair.
The other is covert funding, right? So you got to follow the money, and so we've seen some evidence of this. Also, messing with nomination contests, so busting in foreign students and things like that to try and get your candidate through. And then the biggie is disinformation campaigns, where they're really trying to go after the information ecosystem itself.
And why do we need to be concerned about this, as Canadians, about why foreign governments want to influence our democracy? To what end?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, to make the world look more appropriate for them, right? So this is all about exerting influence and control and power and leveraging this for your own, what we would say is geostrategic interests. So what does that actually mean? Well, we're talking about democracy here, and people often talk about democracy without saying what it is. And what it is, what we are defending here, is two things. The first is democracy as a process. So we elect our leaders. And so through some fashion, you cast a ballot, and there's different ways of doing it. First past the post, majority, whatever. In the American system, they've got the Electoral College, which is this antiquated thing. Doesn't matter. The point is, through some fashion, we all get to pick who our leaders are. So that's the process part. The more important part for this conversation is democracy is an outcome. And there's three things that democracies do that authoritarian governments don't. The first is respect for human rights, right? So this is what's on the line here. The second is pluralism, right? So that we've got a society where we can all live and coexist without violence. And the third is rule of law.
Hmm.
Like, this is what's on the line here. This is what matters, that we get to pick our leaders, that we get to determine our destiny, that we get to decide our future and the future for our kids in a society that respects the rule of law, is pluralistic, right? And is one that where human rights are the bedrock of our kind of ecosystem. And so that's what's on the line here. That's why this matters. And the bad guys don't care about any of the stuff that I just said, right? They're purposely trying to undermine it because they don't like that stuff, right? And they don't like us being able to push back against their view of the world.
All right. We do have a couple of calls that have already come in, so I just want to head to the phone lines. Jan calling in from Texada Island. Hi, Jan.
Hi.
And what are your thoughts?
Well, thank you for addressing this topic, which I think is so important, to really be critically thinking about news, because we know so much misinformation is out there. I was surprised that in the list of countries, India, China, Russia, you didn't include the United States, because their corporations and their government are involved in spreading misinformation. And I'm glad the speaker emphasized human rights, because we know, for instance, Facebook knew very well what was happening in Myanmar with the Rohingya, and continued to allow misinformation to be spread, increasing hatred. And within Canada, I keep thinking of the former leader of the Alberta opposition. He was a Liberal named Kevin Taft. And after his experience with our so-called democracy and being undermined by people in the oil and gas sector, he wrote a book called Oil's Deep State. And he just got out of politics, except at a very local level, because he realized the game was fixed. So it's a very, foreign interference is a very deep-rooted problem, and it's not just new, I think.
No, I think that's a very fair point, Jan. Thank you for that. And Aaron, I'll ask you about that point. It does seem like this has sort of been in the zeitgeist as a more recent election. I think a lot of people, it really became part of their lexicon during the first Trump election, when there was the sort of thoughts of such Russian influence. But this has been going on, perhaps not quite as, not obvious, but perhaps not as widespread. But this isn't a brand new problem that we're coming up against, is it?
No, I mean, look, espionage is as old as states, right? Foreign interference is as old as states. There's nothing new under the sun. But what's different here, and the previous caller touched on it, right? This idea of Facebook and social media. The primary tumor, if I can call it that, is the business model of these platforms, which commercialize intelligence, and they commercialize our attention, and they're very, very good at it, and they're very, very good at knowing you as a user, so that they can sell you stuff. Like they know what type of shoes you wear, how big your feet are, when you need new runners, like what you're likely to buy, and what they do. So that's great if they're trying to sell you stuff, and it's a great economic model for them. The problem is what's on the other side of that is social cohesion and democratic integrity, and using those same tools of influence to try and change your mind in politics. And look, I tend to be a positive guy, but there's some really, really negative trend lines here that don't look good, right? This is all set to get way, way worse. These tools are getting better and better at persuading us, and we're bringing our own cognitive neural biases to the table, right? Like recency, familiarity. Like, we're kind of easy to persuade as a species. And add to this generative AI, where we're actually able to make things completely fabricated that look totally real with the push of a button, and get it out there. And so this is all set to get way, way worse. And so, hopefully we'll have a point in the conversation where we can be a bit more positive. But right now, these trend lines do not look good.
No, and I agree. You do not want to just focus on the negatives, but when it comes to this, we've seen such a degradation. We have to focus on those negatives so that people are aware of them, and aware of how quickly this technology is improving and able to tap into humans. Would love to get more people to be involved in this conversation with us, Aaron. Of course, you can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We do have a call from Peter in Cultus Lake. Hi, Peter. Thanks for joining the show.
One of the countries that was not really mentioned in the beginning was the United States. And apparently back in January, Trump said that he thought Pierre Poilievre would be the best person to be the new prime minister, saying, quote, our views would be more aligned.
Right.
And given the fact that, that Trump, first of all, has the power to change policies to, maybe affect the election. Also, the U.S. has for decades been interfering with elections around the world, in a more underhanded way. And I would not be surprised if that were to continue with this Canadian election.
All right, and I thank you for raising that point. And Aaron, of course, he raises a point that our first caller mentioned, and is that why aren't we considering the USA as a country that would have the ability to influence our upcoming election?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's safe to say that Donald Trump is a president unlike others that we've seen in the past.
Absolutely.
And his behavior is chaotic and just a bit odd, right? And so,
I mean, many say that is his plan is to introduce this chaos, to keep everybody off kilter and not know what he's going to do next, and perhaps not pay attention to everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if I'd go so far as to say that there's a genius plan behind all this stuff. Like it strikes me as instinctual, and you get like his people using Signal to coordinate, like the commercial media tools to coordinate military attacks
Yes,
with journalists.
We had that story come out yesterday.
We're not dealing with the A-team here, so I don't know about that, but like. Maybe there is a nuance to be had here, right? So when we're talking about the Chinas and the Indias and the Russians of the world, we're talking about covert actions. We're talking about disinformation campaigns run by the apparatus of the government itself, foreign funding, trying to stalk nomination committees. Here we're talking about a guy who's, at least he's using the front door, right? Like, what he thinks about stuff, and he's blasting it out to the world. I'm not worried about the CIA trying to doctor trying to influence Canada's election. This is coming from the president, and I think it's driven principally by instinct and just a general lack of civility and decorum.
Okay.
And it was totally foreseeable, right? Like I could have told you this is what was going to happen, because the prime minister, or the then prime minister, and the president didn't get along. It's attitudinal. But we're talking about different things when we talk about what China's up to and what the U.S. is doing.
Fair point. Thank you for explaining that. What kind of steps, though, should Canadians take to prevent any sort of influence from foreign governments in this election? Is there anything a person themselves can do, or is this more just a larger governmental issue?
It's both.
Okay.
But I'll take your question right on its points, and we'll deal with what people can do, what your audience can do. The best defense is staying informed, right? Like, so disinformation, I think that's largely what we're talking about here is on the informational side. It's really hard to be manipulated if you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about and you know what's going on in the world, right? You're like, wait a minute, maybe there aren't such thing as Jewish space lasers or whatever Marjorie Taylor Greene's talking about, or maybe George Soros isn't putting chips in my brain through the vaccine. Like, if you stay vigilant and know, like, just stay generally informed, that will be great. And just look at sources, look at where the information's coming from. There's something to be said for digital hygiene too, and protecting your accounts. So, because depending on, your audience is probably an engaged and informed public, hackers won't hesitate to target campaign volunteers or vocal citizens. Like, this is things that we can see. Maybe the other thing to think about is call it out, right, and report it. If you see something fishy that's blatantly fake news online, you can report it to the platform, right? Let them know what's going on. And then to the extent that your listeners might be targeted by foreign governments, like if they are part of a diaspora community, report that to law enforcement. We have to, this is a Team Canada approach here. And so I would say that those are the main things that I would think about.
Okay. And our Radio Canada colleagues are reporting that during the 2022 Conservative leadership race, Indian consular officials attempted to derail Patrick Brown's campaign, which ushered in Pierre Poilievre to the head of the party. What kind of influence did foreign actors have on the Conservative leadership race, do you think?
Yeah, that I can't say anything about because I saw those reports too, and it's a bit tricky because this is all coming from leaks, and you have to juxtapose that with what we saw from Murray Justice Hogue, who's a really respected jurist. So it's hard. Like as somebody who sits outside of government, the leaks are somewhat salacious, but it's hard for me to take a position because I don't know, right? Like someone said that, but I like. I can't. Unfortunately, I can't take much of a position on it because it's an unconfirmed leak, and I just don't know what happened. And always the details are somewhat opaque, right? Like you get the headline, you're like, oh my God, this is happening, right? But then you
where's
pull
the
back,
substance to it?
And like what is it like? And that's the part that bugs me the most is we seem to have this inability to have an adult conversation in this country about this stuff, right? Like the point here is, and look, I'm nonpartisan, right? I don't care who wins the next election. This also affects our country, our state, the democracy. Our democracy. This is about Canada as a state, not which party will control the majority of seats in the House of Commons at the end of this thing. And regardless of who wins the election, this is going to affect everyone equally, right? And so I just want to have a mature conversation about it. So I think we got to the bottom of what happened, courtesy of Murray Justice Hogue's report. And I think Justice Hogue did a service in doing that. We need to talk about the so what and the now what, right? Like, so we got to the bottom of, we know what adversarial states were doing. We know what they're trying to do to our democracy. So what are we planning to do about it now? Knowing what I said holds is that this is all going to get way, way worse, right? So at artificial intelligence, we're hooking everything we can up to the internet. Canada is a juicy target for foreign governments, and so it's going to get way worse. And we have to get our act together in this country. But we're not going to get there by by a finger pointing game. Like this has to be a mature adult conversation about the way the world is, not the way it should be, the way the world is, and the way we wish to live in it, and what resources we're prepared to direct toward that desired outcome of making Canadians safe and ensuring that our democracy holds, like I said, the process itself, so that we know when the votes are cast and they're tallied, the legitimate winner wins. Right. But also the more important part that I said at the back end, the outcome, a human rights-based pluralistic society where people can live in harmony, notwithstanding their differences, that's based fundamentally on a rule of law where we're all treated equally, regardless of our station in this kind of great Canadian exercise.
And have that faith that the elections are true and fair. Is there any danger that politicians themselves could perhaps make it look like they are encouraging any sort of interference? I know, not to keep harping back on Trump, but in the first election, he sort of jokingly called on Russia to release the emails from Hillary, and some say that almost looked like it gave the go-ahead to Russia to interfere on his behalf. Is that something in this day and age that politicians themselves need to be very careful about, not sort of fanning any flames or incidentally or accidentally making it appear that they would be open to this?
I can't see that with the current group of of members of parliament or even the folks that are running. Like, so again, C.1a, Donald Trump is a bit of a unique animal. And look, for what it's worth, like, as I said, I'm nonpartisan, so I know folks on both sides of the aisle. I spend time with members of parliament routinely, and these are people that are dedicated to this country. They might have policy disagreements, but 201, and without fault and without fail, they want the best for this country, and they're dedicated. And look, for what it's worth, they're doing a hard job. Like, they're commuting in from their constituency offices, they're grinding away. And so these are people that are motivated, I think, genuinely by a sense of public service and a desire to do good. So I cannot see a current candidate for office, at least the ones that I know, being so cavalier as if to call on a foreign government to help you out. If they did, that would be disqualifying in my view, and absolutely disqualifying.
And I'm not drawing parallels between this and what I was talking about, but there is reporting from the Globe and Mail saying that CSIS has been unable to brief Poilievre because he hasn't obtained this security clearance. Let's just have a quick listen to Poilievre's response to that reporting.
On the security clearance, I've already had a security clearance. What I will not do is because I was a cabinet minister, so I've already been cleared. What I will not do is commit to the oath of secrecy that the Liberals want to impose on me. They don't want me to be able to speak about these matters. So they bring me into a dark room and they'll say, we're going to give you a little bit of breadcrumbs of intel, and then we'll tell you can't talk about any of this stuff anymore. Let's be honest. I won the leadership fair and square. Even my political competitors, like Mr. Patrick Brown, have publicly testified under oath that that was the case.
Aaron, I apologize. We've only got about 25 seconds left, but what do you make of that response quickly?
Well, I mean, I don't know. He's got a 50-50 shot of being the prime minister, so he's going to get cleared one way or the other. And I just think the big thing here is that Canadian democracy is in the target of hostile states, and it's down to all of us. It is a Team Canada moment here to do the best we can to make sure that our democracy remains safe, that we get to pick our winners, and that we live in a world of human rights.
Thank you so much for joining us, Aaron. I appreciate it. Aaron Shull is security expert and the managing director at the Centre for International Governance Innovation. It is 12:27, and this is BC Today. Yesterday, we asked how you were feeling ahead of the federal election. Here's what some of you had to say. Mona says, as a longtime Liberal supporter, I have to say I do not have amnesia like many of those I hear speaking. I would like to remind everyone that our government is structured differently than that of the United States. Our Prime Minister does not have the same power as the President of the U.S. Please remember to vote for the party. In case those have forgotten, it was the Liberal Party that got us to this point over the last decade, and now the Liberal Party is adopting many of the changes the Conservative Party has been speaking out against for almost 2 years. Michaela writes, we are a country that was facing economic challenges even before the President of the USA declared economic war on us in order to weaken our economy to a point where he can launch a hostile takeover. I'm pretty sure all Canadians are aware of this, so I can't fathom why any Canadian would vote for anyone other than the highly educated economist with an impressive and proven track record, Mark Carney. Prime Minister Carney, in my opinion, is the only person who can help us win this economic war. And Jari says, I'm a close American neighbor on Orcas Island in the San Juan Islands. I want to say that Trump's pseudo-dig at Pierre Poilievre is just that, a ruse to make Canadians like him more because Trump doesn't like him, and Canadians hate Trump for good reason. In truth, he desperately wants a hardcore conservative, exactly like Pierre Poilievre in power, so that Project 2025 can be pushed further into Canada. Thank you again for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. It's always so much appreciated. And we're just starting to see a little bit of sunshine outside our Vancouver studio after it's been incredibly wet. So hopefully that'll hold for the afternoon. Right now, though, it is time for the CBC News with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. 3 men are dead and another is in critical condition after they were caught in an avalanche near Kootenay Lake. An approaching helicopter spotted the avalanche yesterday afternoon and sounded its siren to alert the heliskiers. One group of skiers were able to get to safety. The other 4 were swept away. A 44-year-old from Whistler, a 45-year-old from Idaho, and the 53-year-old guide from Kaslo were all found dead. The critically injured man is from Nelson. A new poll shows federal Liberals under new leader Mark Carney are pushing further ahead of the Conservatives. The online survey conducted on the weekend by Leger for the Canadian Press found 44% of decided voters surveyed would vote Liberal. The Conservatives garnered 38% support. The NDP had the backing of 6%. And a new Biggs orca calf has been spotted in the Salish Sea. It was part of a group of more than a dozen killer whales seen last week in the Juan de Fuca Strait. The calf is likely just a week or 2 old. And now the BC forecast on the north coast. Showers tapering off this afternoon, then cloudy with a high of 9. Highs around 10 and mainly sunny in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, mainly cloudy with a high of 6. Highs up to 14 with a mix of sun and cloud in the West Kootenay, cloudy in the East Kootenay. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, a few showers this afternoon with some sunshine and a high of 15. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, clearing this afternoon with highs up to 19 degrees. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you, Robert. You're a big country music fan, aren't you?
Oh, huge.
Huge.
Yes. Can't get enough of it.
You're not the only one, sir.
Really?
Yes. Listen to this. So a variety of music genres will be represented at the Junos taking place this weekend, but one of the fastest growing music genres in Canada is country.
Who knew?
That is according to 2024 streaming data for Spotify. It is the Gen Zs and millennials who have taken a liking to those folksy, twangy melodies. Warren Kopnick is the chair of the Canadian Country Music Association Board. He talked about that shift on the early edition this morning. Have a listen, Robert.
It's not your parents' music anymore. This is, thanks in part to streaming services, this is the pop music of this generation right now. The major artists like Zach Bryan, I can relate. I have a 16-year-old in my home who used to get in my car, take over my Spotify, and play hip hop, nothing but hip hop. Now gets in the car and wants to play Zach Bryan. You know, this is a music that is relatable. What we've done is we've broken down the barrier, and we no longer have a stigma. Oh, it's country music. There's no way I can like that, especially in the urban centers. There's no way I can like that. What we have now is a format that is relatable. The artists are relatable. The lyrics are relatable, and at no other time has the format been as popular.
Thank you for joining us here on CBC Radio 1, on the CBC News app, and live streaming as well. Now, in this day and age, you don't have to look too far to find a source of stress or anxiety. Societal media or social media, societal pressures, economic turmoil, and environmental issues can all play a role in declining mental health. Why don't you throw in a pandemic and a never-ending cycle of bad news? And it is no surprise that so many people, especially women, are feeling crushed by anxiety and burnout on a daily basis. And for many, there just doesn't seem to be a break. Are you feeling anxious and burnt out? Have you maybe found a successful way to reset yourself and calm down? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email BC Today at cbc.ca. Our guest today is Rebecca Vigalius, a neurosomatic sleep and stress practitioner. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Amy.
So let's start with the very basics. When we talk about burnout and feeling stressed out, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, great question to start off with. I think the really important thing to understand about this is that stress is a physiological experience. And that's not something that we are necessarily taught. So it's not in your mind, it's in your body. That's why we feel like we do, because stress lives in our body.
Okay. And we hear that from a lot of people, and I've felt that myself, that your body feels like it's perhaps in that fight or flight mode, or your body feels incredibly exhausted. How do we sort of get our mind and our body to match out? We might know in our mind that things aren't that dire, that we're not in that much stress or trouble, but we can't get our body to react properly.
Yeah, because we're kind of thinking about it backwards.
Okay.
So we have to start by working with the body instead of working with the mind. You think about, like, if you have, you've got little kids, or even you're in a conversation with your partner or something like that, and you're like, just relax, right? Or if that happens to you, think about, does that actually work? If someone tells you to relax, very likely no.
Usually the opposite.
Right? Usually the opposite, exactly. Yeah. Because we have to start by working with our body. So, like, the number one kind of most accessible way to do that is through our breath.
Okay.
And so by simply pausing and taking a breath in through the nose and releasing, exhaling through the mouth a little bit longer than you did with your inhale, that is going to send signals to your brain. It's going to lower the threat level in your body, because that's essentially what's happening with stress, is like we are perceiving threat. And I say perceiving because that's what it is. It could be real, could be a bear chasing you in the woods, but most of the time, for most of us in this modern world, it is perceived threat. So we have to work with the body first and foremost to lower that threat level.
Okay. And when somebody seeks you out and comes to you, what are they, usually aiming, to fix? I say that in quotation marks, but what are some of the things that they come to you that they want help with? Is it the lack of sleep? Is it the inability to self-regulate? What are you seeing among your clients that is sort of most common?
Yeah, it's a real mix, but of course there's always those commonalities amongst us, right? So, I like to say that I help my clients feel human again, because at the end of the day, that's what I have found. So many people say to me kind of first and foremost is like, I just want to feel like myself again.
Right.
I just want to feel human again. And so most often that comes down to, for some folks, working on sleep. So, sleep is one of those things that is totally affected by stress. They're bi-directional. So oftentimes we have to start by, taking a look at sleep, but also, regulating the nervous system, that type of thing. So in terms of, what people are saying about this, it's like, I just don't feel like myself. I want to feel like myself again. My body hurts. I've tried everything and nothing seems to work. I've tried meditation and, I just can't make myself sit still. I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm laying there for an hour and I can't get back to sleep. I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired. It's typically that type of language that I'm hearing.
I'm literally like, I feel like I should be checking things off my own personal list, but that is very common. And it seems that I'm well aware that stress impacts everybody in society, but it does seem that women are sort of overwhelmingly the ones who are struggling with these issues the most. Why is that?
Well, I mean, all we have to do is kind of take a look at the load and the burden that is on most women, right? So you think about all of the different roles that we have, all of the pressures that we put on ourselves to push through, to be everything to everyone, to check off all the items on the to-do list, which is never going to happen, by the way. So yeah, it's this kind of, it's individual a lot of the time, but also we have this like collective and cultural and societal pressure that we are dealing with as women. And so then we start to see the stress and those kind of physiological, physical, mental, and emotional symptoms showing up more so in women.
We do have a couple of calls that have come in, Rebecca. I just want to get to them. First, we'll go to Chris in Richmond. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hello.
How are you feeling about sort of stress and burnout these days?
Oh, God. I'm a student at UBC, so right now I am very stressed out with finals.
I can imagine. Finals, yes.
But what's actually really causing me a lot of stress is transit access. I, physically, there was a big delay at the bus loop earlier. I physically could not get to class, and that's been causing me that's been losing me sleep, actually.
I can imagine that would,
Yeah.
Chris. Thank you. And what do you feel like, other than the sleep, when you're in those moments of stress? How is that impacting your body and your way of thinking?
I don't know. It's more so a worry. It's more so like a pattern of thought. So what I've noticed is earlier when I heard about the transit cuts coming next year, the $600 million cuts. What I thought, it's more of a pattern of thought where I was thinking about what's going to happen to my friends who live down in Season, what's going to happen to my grandparents. They go to the doctors using transit. So that's what I've noticed in terms of stress. Yeah.
I can understand that, Chris. Thank you for sharing that. And Rebecca, I know in my family, we kind of refer to that as the anxiety spiral. And it can be touched off with something, as commonplace as transit. But it is a very real fear that has its impact. And then as you see it, it sort of stretches. It's like throwing that rock in the pond and the ripples of anxiety come out. How do we sort of stop it where, yes, you're worried you're going to miss your bus, but without going into those what ifs that are now you're thinking about, Chris is thinking about his grandparents.
Yeah, I'm really glad this came up. So a couple different things, we want to think about all of these different scenarios that are around us. And, as humans, we inherently have this desire for control, right? And when things are uncertain or out of our control, that skyrockets our stress.
Yeah.
So one of the really important things to think about is, what is it in the scenario that I can actually control? That's a really important piece of this, because so often we end up spending all of this energy, both emotional and mental energy, kind of focusing on things that are outside of our control. And that's when those what ifs start more so under the surface. So if we can take a step back and go, okay, what in this situation can I actually control? Typically, it comes back to us, what can I potentially plan around with the transit piece? There's a whole lot of stuff here that's out of our control. We can't control the taxes. We can't control, the actual price we're going to have to pay, that type of thing. But maybe there's something we can look at here. Okay, can I potentially look at a carpool situation? Can I, and there's a million different things we could go down the road on this. But my point being is, really focusing in on those things that are within our own control in any given scenario. So that's number one. And then number two is, back to this idea of real stress versus perceived stress or threat, right? And so what we want to be doing is kind of constantly lowering that threat level within our nervous systems. And we can do that through, mobilization, kind of, when we start thinking about this stuff, can I kind of like shake it out? Can I take a breath? A deep kind of diaphragmatic breath, because doing something like that, I know it sounds so simple, but at the end of the day, that is a really simple, accessible way to kind of come back to our body. And then we can actually start to think more clearly and think more rationally and start coming up with some solutions to these issues that are around us.
Almost hitting a pause button with that breath, giving you that space.
Yeah.
We do have another call in from Allison in Vancouver. Hi, Allison. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, hi there. So I'm just really heartened by your guest today, taking a trauma-informed perspective. I mean, what I often find with CBC shows when mental health is discussed, the trauma is never in the conversation. And right now, I run a Trauma-Informed Practice Institute where people learn about their body and the neurobiology of trauma and just how critical it is, some of the information your guest is giving, because the majority of people don't even understand triggers and don't even know that they're in fight or flight or freeze, and that they can be in that state for months, for weeks and months.
Yes.
So really bringing trauma-informed perspectives into all the mental health discussions. I worked as a mental health therapist for 30 years in the mental health system, and it was very rare that trauma was discussed. So we actually have a system in denial about trauma. And so this is a very heartening conversation today.
Oh, Allison, thank you so much for calling in and sharing that, and for all the work you've done helping people. And yes, Rebecca, it is so wonderful to have somebody that understands that incredibly holistic approach that needs to be taken, that we can't separate our minds from our bodies. And as Allison was saying, that many people don't realize they can be stuck in these what you consider an intense and extreme reaction for weeks on end. And I would imagine too, when you begin to feel something that long and that intensely, you tend to sort of normalize it, would you not? And adapt to being in that way, and what sort of long-term impact that can have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that Allison called in and shared those thoughts as well. I think one of the things that is also really important for us to understand is that when we're experiencing things like anxiety, maybe a bit of disconnection, even things like procrastination, binge eating, maybe there's some emotional, that type of stuff, right? Those are all stress responses. Those are all our brain protecting us. That is your brain's number one job, is to keep you alive.
Right.
And so our nervous system will produce these outputs. There's nothing wrong with you. That if I can leave people with one thing today besides some tangible tools, it's just this idea or fact, actually, that there's truly nothing wrong with you if you are experiencing these things. It is your nervous system producing an output to protect you. And so that's a really important piece to take into your day, and then be able to start working with that. Okay, so based on past experiences I might have had, plus the atmosphere or environment that I'm in now, plus the state of my nervous system, this is what's happening, and I can change it. I can change it.
That's key, that it still can be changed, because I think some people feel that it gets to a point where it's too far gone, and perhaps they can't get back to that reset.
Yeah, and that is never, ever, ever the case.
That is good to hear.
Yeah.
We'd love to have more people call in and join the conversation. You can reach us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Of course, you can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Rebecca, we do get a lot of comments here at the newsroom, and you were a former journalist in your life before this path. Many people point to the news itself being one of the reasons that they are feeling so upset, so stressed, so triggered, and that it is this onslaught of information and negative information coming at them. You've felt the impacts of it. I feel the impacts of it. But how can somebody sort of keep themselves informed, but also disengage a little bit, so they're not feeling like they're trying to drink from a fire hose, in a sense, of information?
Yeah, and I mean, it's really that. It's can you step away? Can you engage and then step away and take even, again, going back to working with our bodies. So, we watch the news. We want to be up to speed on what's going on. I totally get it. I'm still the same way. I love it.
Yeah.
And I also make sure that, once I have consumed that, typically, again, like here's kind of a sidebar, consume that during the day. Don't consume it at night. Don't, let's not be putting all of this information into our systems before we're going to try and get to sleep, right? That can affect our sleep significantly. So consume the information, stay up to date, and then let's regulate. Let's regulate around that, right? Let's go outside. Let's get some natural light. You know, that helps with sleep as well. Really big, important piece of sleep is getting that natural light, especially in the morning. Again, back to our breath. Is there something as well that we can do? Maybe we watch the news and then we hop on and we listen to our favorite song. We dance around the kitchen. Maybe we have a 10-minute chat with a friend or, you know, parent who we love, or whatever the case may be. Maybe we cuddle our pet, right? It's kind of like breaking up those moments,
Right.
and also making sure that we are consuming around, you know, the right time of day for us.
Yeah, that is definitely very key. We do have a call coming in now from Sharon in West Vancouver. Hi, Sharon. How are you feeling today?
Oh, hi there. I'm feeling just fine.
Good.
And I'm just calling up to concur with what your guest is speaking of. And my field has been this for the past 35 years.
Oh, wonderful.
My best known book was called Making the Brain-Body Connection. So I just wanted to add what she said, a real quick hello for people to start with was modulating your breath. That's wonderful. And I wanted to give people a reminder of something that they do naturally, and that is to break the stress cycle, which is that when you're under stress or trauma, immediately the blood goes back into your back survival centers. You want to keep your blood up in the front of your brain, the frontal cortex. The easiest way we do that is our hand goes up to our forehead. It's sort of the classic, oh no response. Did I forget my keys? It's actually a tremendous.
You do that a lot.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And when I go out and train people, I quite often will tell them, if you're in a stressful meeting, it's what you can do in the here and now. You don't have to wait to go to a gym. You could be keeping the blood in the front of your brain, even in a meeting. Just have your hand on your forehead while you're speaking. And that is a wonderful thing to do. And there's a whole lexicon. We have these little buttons and switches on our body that it's so easy for people to learn. And I'm sure these are the sort of things that your guest shares with clients. My books have them as well. I have a top 10 brain body integrators, etc. But I really invite people to take charge of this. And this is not hard. This is not embarking upon a complicated learning process before you get the good of it. It can be as simple as a drink of water, modulating your breath, keeping your hand at your forehead as you think through a stressful situation. Because don't forget, stress does not go away. What you're doing is re-educating your brain-body response to that stress so that you're not going into a non-functional state.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Sharon. And Rebecca, I love that these simple tricks, these things that can be done in the immediate moment to sort of push through and to help you. And many things you probably do naturally. You do, maybe put your hand on your head. You do hold on, I've got my emergency emotional support pen with me always to hold on to if things get a little bit stressful. But those are things that can work. We're going to take a call now from Nitika. I believe that's how her name is said, from Regina, Saskatchewan. Hello. Thanks for joining BC Today.
Hi, thank you for having me on call. This really means a lot to me.
Oh, good.
I am feeling with a lot right now. Only on Saturday, I rushed to the emergency because I got a panic attack.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I had a history of trauma. I did not know anxiety is growing on me. It's just recently, like just 2 days ago, I diagnosed it. Now it's physically showing. And
have you found any ways in the past that have sort of helped you to pull back from the stress and not get to having a panic attack, which is just an awfully traumatic thing for so many people to experience? Is there anything that has worked for you?
Well, in past, I had a job, so I was like very busy. I was working with Saskatchewan Rough Rider and entertainment industry, so it kept me going. But it's also a very stressful industry, so I think it just went hand in hand. But right after I left my job, I didn't realize that it's building on me until when we decided to move to Vancouver. My husband left his job, and now it's And I'm also joining Vancouver Film School. So there is a lot of thing going on, and I think that's why I'm panicking right now. And I'm really doing everything I can. Like I'm doing meditation, yoga. I don't think my body is physically responding a lot. Like I'm getting shivering and stuff. I don't know how to control it.
Oh, Nitika, I'm so sorry that you're going through all this, and I'm sure Rebecca will agree. It's so much change, and for so many people, they rely on those patterns and that normalcy to maintain themselves. And when that equilibrium gets shifted, they tend to sort of lose control. How does somebody work through that when there are so many changes happening?
Yeah, I think this is such an important piece. It's like, when I do the work that I'm doing with my clients, one of the things that's really, really important is this idea of minimum effective dose. So we have kind of everything exploding around us, and we've got all this, we're going to feel off kilter. So we then go, okay, well, if I do this, and this, then, and do it perfectly, then everything should be okay. And so I would invite people to kind of think about that or rethink that all or nothing way of looking at things and go, okay, what is one small thing that I can do right now for myself that is going to be, I love that Natika's doing some yoga and, whatever feels good to you, some movement that feels good. But really making sure that we're not, this happens with sleep too. We try really hard to sleep and it has the opposite effect.
Right.
Sleep effort it's not the same as putting effort into other things. It doesn't help us. So yeah, that would be kind of, one of the things that I would keep in mind is not overdoing all of these different things that we know are good for us.
What?
Just really taking, 5-minute action. Yeah.
One step at a time.
Here. Well, we just end up putting more stress on ourselves, especially for those of us who have previously had perfectionistic tendencies. Again, another stress response.
True.
That's perfectionism is a trauma and stress response. So yeah, just keeping that in mind that, we can help ourselves. We have so much that's within our own control.
Rebecca,
and let's not overdo it.
Let's not. I'm sorry to have to cut you off, but we are straight out of time. I don't want to cause any stress, but thank you so much for joining us. Rebecca Vegalius is a neurosomatic sleep and stress practitioner.